Okay, as an introduction here, I'd like to be able to say that Chris Cogswell is the chair of the Scientific Advisory Board for SkyHub and creator of the Mad Scientist podcast, a weekly show on the history and philosophy of pseudoscience. He received his Bachelor of Science degree from University of New Hampshire in both chemical engineering and philosophy, and a PhD in chemical engineering from Northeastern University. His research work focused on the creation of engineered nanomaterials for various applications. He works currently in the scientific data and analytics and publishing industry. And he's also a member of SCU, and we're just glad to have him on board. And also, by the way, SkyHub is one of our partners. So there you go, Chris, take it away, and let's get into some discussions. But I want to first give the floor over to you just to make a preliminary overview of what you think SkyHub's about, just to inform people.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen quick, just so people can kind of see what we're working on here. So we did have a presentation video that I hope people were able to show or take a look at, rather, I guess I should say. And really in this session, we wanted to do it basically as kind of a Q&A. Happy to answer any questions, show some videos of stuff that we've captured with SkyHubs, things like that. So let me go ahead and share my screen quickly. So, all right, so just going to kind of go over some of these slides quick, just so you get a sense of where we are, what we're working on. So SkyHub, our mission really is pretty straightforward. We want to connect a network of civilian-owned sensor arrays that will utilize machine learning to catalog anomalous events and then share that data with researchers. So the first step is to monitor the sky. So our SkyHub units, this is the size of my SkyHub unit. It is quite small. It connects to a fisheye camera and some other sensors and things, but really the heart of the unit is this here. It's a quite small microcomputer. This microcomputer then is running on software that we make available for free to users. And you can download it from our Git repo right now. So we monitor the sky. Once a video of a event has been collected, we then apply machine learning to, we apply artificial intelligence to basically distinguish between sets of objects. So is this a bird? Is this a aircraft? Is this a drone? Is this a insect? And by making our system better and better at detecting known objects through machine learning, we can then, we hope, end up with a solid set of events that we cannot categorize using our methodology, and those will be our unknowns. So really trying to make this process based on the falsifiability of a scientific hypothesis to make it sit within really what can be studied and what can be known. Ultimately, once those unknowns have been collected, we want to make them available to researchers and users so people can actually go and utilize our tool. But then they can also, if you don't have a SkyHub, you can go out and actually see what other people have captured on their hubs. So currently our team is composed of about 8 core people. So Steve McDaniel, myself, Corey Gaspard, Adam Allen, Richard Hopf, David Moore, Justin Phillips, and Paul Wright. We have over, this number, when I first sent over these slides, we had 200 community members in Discord. We're now over 500 community members in our Discord and getting close to 1,000 total members on kind of the mailing list who are interested in this technology and want to see it move forward. But really that's kind of our methodology here. This is what a SkyHub actually we hope will look like. So ultimately, if you think SkyHub, we want you to think it is an open source citizen science project, a global network of smart trackers collecting data on moving objects in the sky. The cost per unit is about $1,000. Depends on the kind of camera you get and everything else. The units are quite small and they're expandable for non-core applications like bird watching or astronomy or whatever else you'd like. So other than that, that's kind of where we are right now. I guess I can show off here a live view of one of our trackers currently running live right now. So this is one of the trackers running. The SkyHub camera is here, and then the rest of this here is stuff that the user who has this camera set up has created here just to kind of look at some of the other data there, but so you can see here some ADS-B, Stellarium, Spectrum Lab for detection of radio waves and things like that, and passive radar. All right, so with that, I'm happy to take any questions people had. So yeah, Rich, I don't know how we want to do the questions here, but I'm happy to answer them.
All right, well, there's some of them that have been put in there previous to actually this session. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to make sure that we also, some of these will also apply to with Ron Olch in his session. But let me get started and go down the list. At what range can, excuse me, that just changed here. At what range can a SkyHub unit detect a UAP? Assume that this is a function of the camera's capability, but also of the software ability. I'm in New Hampshire on a south-facing slope, 20 to 30 miles from the presidential range. There is a lot of open sky on clear nights between here and there. So again, what range can you go to detect a UAP? I guess is the question.
Yeah, it's a really good question. And actually, I'm actually heading up towards that way in New Hampshire this weekend, or I guess this week, actually. It's not the weekend, but my wife has off this coming week. So exciting stuff. Anyways, the range, it does depend on the camera. So currently we're using a Dahua fisheye lens. It depends on other factors too, clarity of the night and stuff like that. But I can say, for example, we are able to detect the International Space Station as it crosses the camera lens on evenings. So, low Earth orbit is what we're talking about here. There are some ideas about adding things like telescopic lenses or things like that to the cameras. And actually, one of the things that our hardware developer Richard is working on is a PTZ camera, which will have much higher resolution, much finer resolution. The fisheye is being used for the initial artificial intelligence kind of strategy. So yeah, to make a complicated answer from a relatively simple question, how far can these things detect things? Low Earth orbit. Low Earth orbit is the answer.
All right. Once you capture a UAP on camera along with its data, who do you share that data with?
Yeah, that's a great question. So currently we share that data with anyone who, currently we share that data with people in our Discord chat, but the data itself that we're sharing are videos that users are posting for free on their own, right? So users are capturing something on their SkyHub saying, oh my God, what do you guys think this thing is? And then posting in the Discord. The ultimate goal here would be that the data itself becomes anonymized. So obviously, one of the sensors we have on these, say, for example, is a GPS unit, right? So we don't want those GPS coordinates to go out there to people. However, the sort of data that we're pulling from the kinematic estimation, from the bounding boxes and things like that, that sort of data we hope to be made available and accessible to researchers. So if you sign up for SkyHub or if you get a SkyHub camera, you're doing so with the understanding that that data is going to be made available to the public for utilization. We do not want to, what's the word? We do not have like private data servers or anything else like that that people would, I guess what I'm saying is this is an open source project, right? So there's no way for us, or there's no impetus really for us to store data and then just hide it or things like that. There'd be no reason to, and there'd be no way to, frankly. The software is available on the internet.
Do you currently have any photos or videos of UAPs that you're analyzing and investigating? If so, can you provide any details of the investigation on these photos or videos?
Yeah, so actually we do have some really cool. So let me pull up one of these. So some of the videos that we've actually pulled, so you can find them on our YouTube channel. But so here, let me share my screen quickly so people can see this. Okay, so for example here, this is actually from the SkyHub live stream. And so there you can see kind of something like some sort of fireball or something coming into frame, kind of burning or whatever and then ending up there, for example. Another good one here. So we have a SkyHub currently in Alaska that is capturing some of the coolest stuff that I have, some of the coolest stuff that I've seen to date, I would say. So let me showcase one of those here. So this here, for example, looks like a meteor. Right, and so here you can see, right, so something coming into frame and then shooting off very quickly. But again, we believe that's a meteor. Here, this one, we're capturing the Northern Lights, which is quite interesting, right? It's obviously a very long event here, and then a star shooting off there. This one here is quite interesting. So this is a zoomed in video. But so here, for example, oh, hold on one second here. YouTube got him out of its own there. This is something to be captured again on that video. We're not really sure what this is. We suspect, though, it looks like there is this one object that's taking kind of a normal path, and then this one that's sort of spinning and floating in place. We suspect that this is some kind of debris or something, maybe of a maybe not a Mylar balloon, but some kind of military balloon or something. These are the kind of videos that we are collecting here, basically every day. So there's a lot of things in the sky that you may not realize. And yeah, the basic idea here with these SkyHubs is that we would use basically the object's pathing to do the analysis here for us, right? So in other words, for example, if I share, let's say, like the whiteboard here instead, right? So we can all do some math here together. I promise not to get too math heavy. But so for example here, the basic idea would be, if this is the, let's say, fisheye lens, and you have an object that in 1 second moves from here to here to here. So this is second, or this is moment, 1, this is time 2, this is time 3. And then from time 3 to 6, it just sort of sits there, it sits there, and then suddenly moves this distance in another second. Right, so this is second 7. You can actually, now we're not collecting exact velocities or accelerations or things, but the basic idea here is that between, let's say, this point and this point, where it took 3 seconds of motion, we can calculate an approximate velocity, or kind of a normalized velocity based as pixels per frame or pixels per second, right? Just very simply as the change in distance. Right now, obviously these are vectors, so we have to take into account the multiple directions and everything else. But you can imagine that essentially what this is would be, this is the position at 3 minus the position at 1 over the time it took to go from 3 to 1, or from 1 to 3, right? And then same thing here in this section there. We can calculate that same sort of positioning calculation, right? So very simple kind of kinematic calculations here that we're thinking of doing. And then essentially what we're expecting to do, right? So in this case, maybe we could also get an acceleration. That acceleration would be the change in the velocities over time, right? We can get an impulse, we can get all kinds of other things. But the basic idea here is, this is the kind of strategy here for the machine learning itself, is that if we plotted, again, on a histogram plot, the velocities of known objects. So for example, here, if we say we're plotting the velocities that we experience on SkyHub of, say, insects, airplanes, and then maybe drones, that there are going to be some set parameters there within a 95% confidence interval that we can say, this is fitting within the velocity profile, say, of an airplane, or this is fitting within the velocity profile of, say, an insect. If we then have multiple parameters that we're measuring simultaneously, right? So for example, as opposed to just say velocity, but also the accelerations the objects can take, the blinking patterns, the noises they make, all these other things, then eventually what we anticipate is we can build an algorithm ourselves that looks at these objects, compares their kinematic parameters that we're estimating, and then basically gives out a likelihood that this is one of those objects in that categorization. And again, anything that fits outside of this parameter, right? If we got something here that looks like this, if this is falling outside of this parameter consistently, that's an unknown. And then this is the stuff that then we would say, okay, well, this is interesting. And further from that, then if we have enough of these sensors, we can start to say, okay, well, hey, we're getting a lot of unknown hits in, I don't know, let's say we get super lucky, my garden outside is getting a lot of unknown hits, right? Then we can start thinking about other applications, things like triangulation and stuff like that. So that's kind of the basic strategy of SkyHub. That's the basic idea here with our machine learning, in the most simplest terms there. That's a heck of an answer to that question. I don't even know what the question was, Rich.
Oh, that's okay. But you did an excellent job of it. Let me tell you. So I just out of curiosity, in your context there with velocity you were talking about, with everybody moving into hypersonics and things like that. What kind of velocity? I mean, it would probably end up going across the screen very, very shortly, and you wouldn't be able to detect it, right?
So there is first off, just because again, Keith Conroy in the chat here gave a really good, a really good point here, right? And it's one that we can't say enough. What we're doing is we're not actually measuring exact distances, right? We don't know how far away these things are, right? So our strategy, the hypothesis that we're basically testing with SkyHub is that we can treat these objects to start with as blobs, right? As just simple points of light. And then by measuring the changes kind of normalized to the cameras we have, that we can end up with a good method of picking apart objects, sure. Right? The next stage to that would be can we use multiple SkyHubs to say triangulate and then measure an actual distance or an actual speed or velocity or acceleration or whatever. So, we're kind of getting I don't know, you would call it like the SkyHub distance or the SkyHub, SkyHub speed or whatever. Like it's the speed in the frame. It's actually measured because we're using a computer vision model. It's not based on the actual object speed. It's based on what the computer itself or the vision of the computer itself sees.
Sure.
Right. So it's how many pixels does it travel in a given time, things like that. In terms of those say hypersonic, vehicles or things flying very, very quickly or whatever. Honestly, we haven't tested enough to know how quickly one of these, what would it look like? But I would anticipate that in that case, maybe what we would be looking for would be more along the lines of, we have a SkyHub, say in New Hampshire, I got a SkyHub here in Massachusetts. If they both see the same sort of thing within a given time period, then maybe that's a way to estimate a speed. But again, it's a bigger question. It's something that we're not tackling right now.
Would it be possible to add a spectrometer to SkyHub?
Yeah, absolutely. So, people have tried different sensor arrays or different types of sensors. So you can absolutely add other things. One of the things that we've considered adding, say, for example, is, different kind of different lenses to measure different sorts of electromagnetic behavior, right? You could add a spectrometer, you could add, a geophone, you could add things to measure humidity and pressure and temperature and all those other things. I mean,
as well really, as audio detection. I mean, can you?
Yeah, there can be audio detection. The other thing that we're trying very hard to be careful with, so on some of the videos actually now you can hear audio, right? So we have one video that I think is up on the YouTube channel, but certainly is in our Discord, where a military craft flies low and you can definitely hear that thing going off, right? You can definitely hear that thing flying above you. It's what we're currently focusing on is getting the computer vision methodology working correctly, because we think that that is going to be the most bang for our buck, frankly, in terms of both cost to users to like buy sensors and things like that, but also in terms of computational power and time. That's the goal, right? Is to make it as efficient as possible, as cheap as possible in terms of computing power and time, so that it can very quickly get these things out and get that measurement.
In terms of that audio detection, do you happen to know anything about the frequency range that you could go? I mean, is it going to be?
Yeah, so that's a really good question. Actually, yeah. So just quickly, Robert in the chat here says it was part of the video. Yeah, I was wanting to say it was part of that video you guys saw before this session or should have seen. You can definitely hear the plane there.
Okay.
In terms of the so we're evaluating different microphones. So actually, we're looking at different sorts of microphones right now, and they all, each microphone will have its own kind of different range and things like that. We're looking at microphones potentially that can measure beyond human hearing, or beyond what we would normally consider to be, the human hearing, or even, kind of animal hearing range. But there are some other concerns there too, right? So one of them is, if you put up a SkyHub camera, there are laws in some countries or places that require, you can't just record people talking, right? For things like that. So it's a little bit of a interesting question that we're still trying to figure out. But yeah, it's a good question. It's a very good question.
All right. The next one, given that you can feed noise into a ML algorithm via a GAN to get a misclassification, do you think ML is robust enough to reach the status of Popper's falsifiability?
Oh my goodness, what a great question. Shout out to Karl Popper, one of the most important philosophers of science of all time, in my opinion. So that's a really great question. So the way that you train the model really matters. So we're not training our model based on, for example, if we train the model based on things that I saw and thought was an airplane, we would probably bias them towards skepticism, right? On the other hand, if we trained the model based on, I don't know, what a random person in my family, thinks of as an airplane or whatever, it might bias it towards the other way, right? That everything is an unknown versus an airplane or a drone or whatever. Which is why building a robust training data set that is 100% knowns, right? So this is an airplane. We have the code that the airplane gives off to say, hey, I'm an airplane, I'm flying overhead, right? Or this is a meteor, and we can actually say for certain this is a meteor. It was detected by these other places. This is where it came from, all those other things. So it's a really great question. And so it is why, frankly, we are trying to be as careful with the selection and the building of the machine learning tool set that we utilize. For example, one of the things that we actually looked at first, or one of the first videos that we put out there that we saw that we thought might be something interesting, we've now had people who are more involved in, say, drone, flying of commercial drones and things like that, come out and say, hey, actually, if you look at the way that this object moves, it's showcasing a very common effect that happens to drones when it switches from like a flight path mode to like a search and scan mode, for example. So the other part of this is it's why we need to have such a large community of people who know what they're talking about, because frankly, I don't know what a drone looks like, right? Like, I know what a drone looks like, but I don't know it as well. I don't know it well enough to say this is definitely what this is, right? Otherwise, we would just be building a system that, is machine learning based off of the SkyHub group's opinion of what an unknown looks like. But yeah, it's a very good question. We expect at the beginning, we will probably get some misclassifications. The goal, though, is, and again, if this hypothesis we're using fails, that using these kind of kinematic parameters can be used in this case, if that hypothesis fails, it's why the system is built to be modular. It doesn't have to rely on the fisheye, right? We could do PTZ cameras. We could get other sensors on board. We could do other things like that. So yeah, just a really good question. And one that's, we're trying our best. We're trying our best to get around those questions or figure out for ourselves even those questions of falsifiability, of false positives or false negatives, all those things. The good news is there are a lot of other people, because we are not, well, let me put it this way. We aren't starting off by saying, we think a UFO looks like this or a UAP looks like this, and then looking for those parameters. We are starting off by saying, we know what an airplane looks like. We know what a bug looks like. We know what a drone looks like. Those are things we can know, right, before we start looking. Because we're starting from there, I think we're already sort of ahead of the curve in terms of falsifiability of study. If we were going out and saying we're only looking for, say, these, the 6 observables or 5 observables or whatever, then it might be a challenge. Yeah.
Understand. I just want to let you know that, I mean, I think I mentioned it earlier yesterday, but I'm working on a project where we're putting drone killer and detection systems out at facilities, military facilities. And so we have everything from acoustics to radar to the spectrum and everything else being deployed on these things. And they have the same challenges to be able to filter out, the other stuff and come up with the drone. So anyway, it's all good. Okay, will it be available outside the US, for example, in Canada? And then how do you contend with the fact that, you'll have snow and ice accumulation on anything?
So yeah, it is available. It is available outside the US already. Actually, the live stream SkyHub is in Europe. It's not in the United States. That people are watching. We have units. I want to say we have units now in North America, South America. We have them in Europe. I don't think we have a unit out in Asia yet, but maybe someday soon that'll happen. I think someone is building one in Asia currently. The only real limitation, frankly, at this point is, so, SkyHub, we don't sell units, right? We don't sell things. And we're trying hard not to get into the business of selling things because, believe me, we've tried setting up an Amazon store and it is, forget machine learning. That is the hardest thing of all possible tasks. Currently the only thing that people can buy from SkyHub, and really we like to think of it more as a donation, is the actual SkyHub enclosure itself, which basically has been built to house all of the stuff that we make available for SkyHubs. But frankly, you can build a SkyHub without having an enclosure. So the biggest challenge has been, if you're outside of the United States or outside of, say, Canada or Europe, it's getting the camera or the type of camera that we suggest getting, and also getting the actual microcomputers themselves because of the chip shortage that is currently going on across the world. So yes, though, they are completely accessible. What I will say is that in terms of ice and snow and things like that, one of the best cameras we have, one of the most active SkyHubs, is in Alaska currently. It sees more snow than most of us will see in a given year, probably in a month. And it's running fine. It's running great. The enclosure that Richard designed with his hardware team working through SkyHub is able to withstand extreme weather events, snow, ice, heat, all of those different things. So, while you can do a DIY enclosure for those sorts of conditions, the official enclosure is a very robust piece of equipment that can allow you to get over those problems.
We have just about a chance to do one more or two more questions here. Let me see. Are you considering interfacing SkyHub with the GEOS platform, the Global Earth Observation System, or any of those systems?
Yeah, so actually we're currently talking with various groups that are doing what's the word? We are currently working with various other organizations that are in fact doing studies on, say, like meteors, right? So SETI has CAMS, which is their meteor study program. We are talking with them and kind of trying to work with them. We have other groups of people that we are working with, other meteor detecting groups and things like that, and astronomers and everything else. So yeah, really at this point, it's probably one of the most exciting things about this topic becoming more mainstream and more acceptable is the fact that the ability for tools like this to be utilized, not just for, again, we don't necessarily look at ourselves at SkyHub as a UAP tool or a UAP platform. We look at ourselves as a near Earth orbital surveillance platform, right? That's really what the field of study that we're in would be called. And that's how we view ourselves. So really, although so far the most engaged with community by far has been the UAP community, we do anticipate that other groups, we've captured some amazing things in terms of bird watching. We've captured amazing weather events. We've captured amazing meteor events and space events. So it's really just a matter of getting the word out there and showing that this can work as successfully as we are hoping to make it.
Thank you, Chris. I appreciate your time and your explanations. There are a lot of additional questions we couldn't get to, but if you would, you feel free to go over and answer any of those ones we didn't get to. We've got them up there yet. When you get a chance, that's in the Whova app and it's on your sessions. So I just want to ask you to do that if you could.
Absolutely. Yeah. And please, if you would like, please do join our server on Discord. We're always looking for new people to come on board and work with us, and we're happy to have you all. So thanks so much, Rich, and thanks. And Ron, I'm looking forward to your section here.
Thank you so much. And
thank you.
I'm going to introduce Ron. Mr. Ron Olch is also an SCU member. He's a his bio is that he's a systems engineer, research and development, UFO DAP, UFO data acquisition project. It's called UFO DAP. Develop complete mechanical, electronic, and software design starting in 2014. He's got a BS in engineering and computer science and an MS in computer science from UCLA. He opened the first microcomputer store in West LA, consultant for scientific applications of microcomputers, subsequently employed by Teledyne Controls Aerospace, Walt Disney Imagineering. By the way, I know a lot of people that were with that. I have to talk to you about that offline sometime. And the AeroVironment, retiring after more than 30 years of engineering experience in 2013. A named inventor and 8 patents, and have a lifetime interest in designing, building, and programming embedded electronic systems. Ron lives in the Los Angeles area. And without further ado, here you go. Would you like to give us an overview about the UFODAP system, Ron?
Sure, that'd be great.
Great.
And maybe what I'll do is share the screen.
Sure.
To do that. Whoops, wait a minute.
Oh, we see it.
You see it?
We sure do.
Okay, so basically the UFODAP was a project to advance the goal of data collection, equipment, and the analysis of the collected data. In the last year or so, we have a collaboration we've developing with the UFO Data Group, which Rich is part of, to do the upload, storage, and analysis of such data. And so I'm focusing the effort in UFODAP on providing the equipment and the software and the architecture to do the upfront data analysis, data collection. And basically the collection problem you are aware of is that in the past, such data collection's been after the fact, right? We don't really often know where it comes from. The provenance of witness reports and photos and videos may be questionable. And all kinds of environmental effects affected, and you really don't, and we can't really depend upon government agencies with probably incredible equipment they may have to share their data. You know, we're not going to wait around for that effectively. So the point is, starting in 2014 and with the availability of very low cost hardware, free software tools, just amazing tools, I dove into the quest for developing a system and an architecture that could collect that data unattended 24/7 in all weather conditions. And that's what UFODAP became. The requirements, therefore, which we want to start from the top down, is we want to deal with extreme weather. Why? Because the events we're dealing with, even if we think we're in a high observation area, a so-called flap area perhaps, is it rather rare. And you never know when it's going to, you know, things are going to appear. So we want to put them out where they can see whatever you expect them to see for the very long term. And that requires a number of things. They have to be in remote locations. They have to be available to withstand all weather conditions. And subsequently, when the data is collected, that data has to be geolocated and time locked. And because the very long time periods involved, those involved who are interested in that data need to be notified because they're not paying attention at that moment. So UFODAP systems do that. So what UFODAP became is it has currently the ability to measure all these kinds of things, including frame rate video, magnetic perturbations, gravitational perturbations, radio frequency anomalies. Shortly we'll have what I call a tracking spectrometer available based on a camera with this blaze grating attached by magnets to the front of the camera, which has proved rather interesting. And still in video. In addition, it also collects CSV files, which are, of course, Excel compatible, of all of the data that is related to this collection. For instance, the time lock data of all the pan tilt or azimuth and elevation and zoom values of the camera systems and other things which we'll see. The system automatically employs various software methods by machine analysis, machine learning, and so on to avoid upfront some anomalous objects that are known to not want, we want to avoid. We can, I don't know why that's flipping on its own. So it makes some pre-qualifications, which are kind of user adjustable. If we, for instance, it's very common to get a lot of bird tracks or insects that move through the field extremely fast. And if you want those, UFODAP will collect them. But typically, it can be set up so that if that effect doesn't last long enough, it will just ignore it. And ultimately, UFODAP collects all kinds of data in a hierarchical organization of automatically created data folders. And in fact, at the end of a collection, if it finds that the data was not valid or some such, it will automatically delete some of that, but never deletes anything you might consider usable data. Post-collection, UFODAP currently implements AI methods such as SDR for qualifying automatically the video, their all standard AVI files. It automatically reads through those as a batch at any time the user wants to, point it to a folder full of such files anywhere, or it will automatically do it every time a particular target has been tracked to completion. So it will automatically detect things like birds and all kinds of aircraft day or night. In fact, I developed a custom algorithm that identifies aircraft at night by standardized aircraft lighting flash patterns. What I would like to do, this is going to be just way too much here to go through right now. There in the last 6 to 7 years, a heck of a lot's been developed and deployed. It's all off the shelf. If you go to UFODAP.com, you'll see a ton of videos, and there's a download section with some very extensive documents, including a installation guide. It's about 50 pages, and a very extensive user guide to all the software and systems. It's like 150 pages now, and has all kinds of stuff. And also an R&D section. You can see the tracking spectrometer and all of that sort of thing. But importantly, the methodology, to be clear about the differences, the UFODAP methodology is a plug-and-play system with a architecture that provides a very broad ability to plug and play different kinds of components. So one thing I recognized early on when I tried to use an embedded microcontroller, it was at the time, and I just found that since most users, almost every user has their own PC, why make them buy that component? And B, it was at least 5 times slower in embedded than what PC could do. So the things that I could now do from tracking in real time and AI and everything else was so enhanced by using a PC that's the direction I took it. Also, the philosophy is the user owns all the data. All the data is collected on their own computer and can be uploaded to the database I mentioned from UFO data at any time for analysis. And so the user, though, has various filters, like the AI filters I mentioned, to collect it before they want to share. And for their own purposes of reducing the workload of looking through all those potentially voluminous AVI files and narrowing it down to the ones that the system hasn't automatically classified as unknown, which it will do. So the hardware architecture is very modular, as I said, based on data acquisition units. One type of data acquisition unit is essentially a camera or 2 cameras run by the OTDAU software. All of these DAUs can communicate over the internet to another piece of software called Mission Control. Mission Control, which if I can, will show you, has the ability to triangulate and data from 2 OTDAUs, wherever those cameras may be, and automatically triangulate and calculate from that the position over the Earth, the altitude, the velocity, size of the object, and all of that, and display it in real time on a moving Google map and record that map in real time. As I mentioned, different kinds of DAUs, like the optical tracking DAU that tracks, it automatically detects and then tracks, and while it's tracking, optionally can incrementally zoom in. And it was a real trick. It was a tremendous amount of effort to develop the software to be able to track and zoom at the same time. The principal methodology is to have a servo loop that constantly moves the target to the center field of view, and such that when the zoom occurs, the object will not be thrown off to the edge and lost. Another type of DAU, which is, all of this is currently available, is the MSDAU, multi-sensor DAU, which is this, which has a variety of mountings. And again, it is Ethernet connected. In fact, it's powered by power over Ethernet, as all the cameras are. And it provides about 15 different sensors. And by the way, it's fully documented. There's a data sheet you can download. It was in the presentation if you noticed it. It can, without going into the details now, it can see gross changes in the gravitational or electromagnetic field that in its vicinity. And therefore, effects of UAPs hopefully will be collected, and more importantly, time locked to optical events. If we have that kind of collection, that would be a first in ufology, I believe. We would be able to say in a totally unattended data acquisition that we have multiple source streams of data on the same phenomena. The MSDAU you just saw also includes a scanning software radio, which can scan and record parts of the electromagnetic spectrum from 25 megahertz to 1750 megahertz. And a upcoming DAU I'm working on, which we call an RF DAU, will carry that from 1 megahertz to 6 gigahertz in a faster scanning pattern. There are many other things that systems can do. I won't go through all of this. I hope you get a chance to see it. But this is what an OTDAU screen looks like. As a matter of fact, and then these are some of the cameras. Notice that the system currently supports all these cameras. And by the way, one of those is the NKBR4 Dahua fisheye camera, which I think might be the same one that SkyHub likes to use. But it can combine it with a pan-tilt zoom camera currently to automatically do a handoff if it sees anything moving, which when you use a camera, which is a sensor, which is 4,000 by 3,000 pixels, that initial point of light can be very, very small on the periphery. In any case, no matter where it sees it, it hands off the pointing angle to a pan-tilt zoom, either 30, this is actually 32 times currently, or 12 times, points it in that direction, and it then does its own detection and tracking and zooming. So now we have taken, we get more pixels on target than even 4,000 by 3,000 camera can do, of course. Because when you can zoom in 32 times, obviously that, you know, the fewer pixels of a 2 megapixel or 4 megapixel camera becomes vastly more important. And this is another camera that's, I'll be offering shortly, a 25 times zoom, but this has the optical grading attachment and optionally a horizontal polarizer. That's another effect of UAP research that's been noted. Some things can only be seen that way. And this is what the spectral line looks like in real time. You notice that it not only is capturing the spectral line, but it's doing it in real time.
Ron, we're not seeing anything other than that screen or the wide angle display. Are you changing something?
No, I didn't change anything. I think it should be showing that. Maybe the video aspect of this isn't.
Yeah, we see the images that you've got of the wide angle and the auxiliary video display. That's what we have on the screen.
Oh, I think, let's see, does this go to the video now?
I'm not sure I know what you mean.
It's called, on the top, it's called Example of Horizontal Line Spectra recorded by the UFODAP Tracking Spectrometer.
No, we're not seeing anything like that. So if you're sharing your screen, we're just getting those two cameras.
Yeah, no, it's part of the same video. I guess I'd have to recommend that everybody just go look at the video.
Yeah.
Which they can also see on the homepage of UFODAP.com as the same thing. So you can get it from the conference or there. But in any case, it shows as a bright point of light moves across the screen, off to its left is a line spectrum. And the important thing here is that, as we know that some UAPs can emit different spectra as their power seems to change. You know, if you call it powering up or down, sometimes it's thought that they power up and the spectrum may change just before they zoom off and all those effects. So that's not something we want to try to record. And I guess you can't see this either. The tracking is probably a video. It shows the effect where it's the system's automatically tracking and zooming on an aircraft. Anyway, I don't want to take too long with all this introduction because you can see all this.
We'll get into the questions and answers. Yeah, we don't see that display on your screen at all. So
yeah, I can go off and do that separately.
We can come back and ask you some of the questions we got coming in here.
Right. So I got to get back to.
Yeah, stop your sharing.
Yeah, stop the sharing.
Yep, which is down at the bottom of the screen. There you go.
There we go.
And we got you back. Good.
Yeah.
All right. So if you're ready, I'll begin hitting you up with some of these questions we got.
Great.
So one question that just came in, what type of instrument can you use to detect gravitational disturbances? Anything?
Well, essentially, the MSDAU I showed you incorporates about 3 different kinds of accelerometers. It has a DC accelerometer, an AC accelerometer, and a rate gyro. All 3 of those we'll see, and each of those in 3D. XYZ. So the effects we don't really know. You know, we can't. It's hard to specify exactly what such an instrument should be because we don't know the size of the effect, but we presume that the size of the effects is so gross that the effect on those sensors will be noted and recorded. And mission control, which is what records everything connected to the MSDAU or MSDAUs, you can have up to 6 of them. They will record all of that. So that we'll see those changes, as well as its so-called compass, or it has a 3DOF magnetometer. It'll see magnetic fluctuations.
Oh, good stuff. Great presentation. What are the minimum distance requirements between 2 UFODAP systems to allow for accurate triangulation of an object at 1, 10, or 100 miles?
Oh, no. It would be in a matter of several hundred feet to a mile, probably. There's a discussion, some calculations related to that in the installation guide you can get online. Go, you know, deal with that question a bit. But the issue is, you know, the key thing is that both cameras, of course, have to track the same object at the same time, of course. If there are trees getting in the way of buildings and so on, you know, that becomes problematic. So you have to set that up. The closer the cameras are together, then of course the resolution of the cameras and the azimuth and elevation feedback from the cameras and so on all come into play with determining that. But I think you'd get a good idea of that data from, you know, not too far apart.
How accurately can your system identify the change in angular size of an object?
I hesitate to put a number on that because of all the variables involved.
Understand.
You know, so I think that's, I probably have to leave it at that. You know, at the moment, it doesn't come to mind a number. If you want a number.
So would it be possible to incorporate data from existing all sky cameras or other things into anything of your system?
Well, the system, as I pointed out, the system itself includes an all sky camera. Yeah, but you know, another cool thing is, the interesting thing is UFODAP systems can be as inexpensive as just the $95 OTDAU software coupled with one's own USB webcam. And then, or you can use a camera like this, which is a very wide angle, 98-degree field of view, you know, PoE camera. Not terribly expensive. And then what you do is most people kind of got an idea of where in the sky something of interest might happen. So they set this up. I have a mount for this that's on a typical tripod, or about 3 other mounts. It can be on a pole or on a building or wherever you like. It's all in the shop on UFODAP. And it just scans the sky. And because it doesn't have to try to move, it's really fast. And because the PC and all that stuff. So I easily track all manner of things shooting across the screen, birds and all that. And in fact, with our embedded camera that's currently embedded in the SLV, that has captured all manner of meteors and aircraft. You know, that's easy stuff. And the interesting thing is, I don't know if we have time now, I could show you a real-time view from the SLV, but it also records optionally the pattern. It's kind of interesting in that it records like a series of tiny green boxes everywhere it did a hit, which is like the way overlap. And so you see the tracking pattern of how the object moved in the sky, even though you weren't there at the time or you was too fast to notice and so on.
If better cameras and other sensors became available, can they be added?
Yeah, easily. The architecture of the system provides for my ability to sometimes it's as easily as changing just some parameters in menus. In some cases, the camera is different enough, or I am suspicious enough of it, if it's implementation, that I would go in and I might have to tweak the software a little bit in certain sections to make sure that it works as expected with both its feedback, because the system queries PTZ cameras for their position and has to control them correctly. So that's all important to work out, but it's all feasible. In fact, one of the things on the R&D list is to provide a pan tilt head with 2 mounting positions that has no dedicated cameras. And by that means, what I'd like to do is be able to provide a fixed camera combined with, say, your DSLR. And so it will do the tracking with the fixed camera just like a PTZ camera, but when it sees something, it could start a series of high-resolution photo imaging. Likewise, the first camera could be an IR, a long-wave IR camera. You know, all the cameras now I have now do near infrared as an option, but if we want long-wave, that could be done as well, and that's, you know, not hard to implement.
Sure. What would be an entry-level system build cost if you have your own PC and network?
I think there are some, I have about 5 different systems available, independent of separate components, which you could always get. I think it's maybe, I forget, maybe $300-400 perhaps. Maybe a little more, $700-800. Depends which camera one wants. You check it out and see. It depends on the mountings too. There's all kinds of different mountings. Some people want a tripod. I have systems that have a heavy-duty surveyor's type tripod for stability. Other systems use a standard 1/4-20 tripod. And if you want, I have a number of people who've mounted it on the ridge of their roof, and there they pick a standard pole mount, for example.
I think the answer to this one's already been made, but okay, can anything useful be done in terms of detection from indoors if you don't have a suitable outside area to use?
Oh yeah. In fact, the way I developed the system, I was lucky enough that I am in a 2nd story where the window points due north, and the pattern of aircraft of all kinds goes from west to east into Burbank Airport at 2,500 feet. And so all the time I get these nice targets to track, not including all the police helicopters, all the birds, all the traffic into Van Nuys Airport and so on. So, and that's all through my window. And so it's, if you have a clean window and a decent view, and that's an area you think that something might happen, there's nothing to it. You could that's why you can use a non-weatherproofed webcam.
Okay, so let's see, would you consider prioritizing locating your systems with sponsors that locate their units in UAP hotspots first, and then expand your covered area?
Yeah, I love it. I mean, that's what we do now. We hope that individuals or groups will purchase systems of various complexity and do exactly that and install them, and then some have. Sure. And there's been systems used for all kinds of things. In fact, there have been a system that was actually purchased by the production company of the Discovery Channel Expedition X. They've used it in 3 shows now, just recently on Catalina Island. And in fact, they brought the ATIP folks over there as part of that discussion. And they will be taking, I gather, to Texas. God knows what they're going to look for there. But they are so enthused about it that they purchased a system, and I've trained them a couple times.
Some new sensors can image 8K video. What are the camera resolutions deployed today?
Well, the highest resolution camera that I have is that fisheye at 4,000 by 3,000. Yep. But bear in mind, this is the key thing about the development, that even a camera that's 1920 by 1080 or HD, and some of the cameras I showed you go well beyond that, fixed cameras, they will still see a tiny object. And part of the question a lot of people have is, well, how far can it see? What's the farthest thing? Well, it all depends upon, of course, the emittance of light from the object, its contrast with the background, and how far away it is, and so on. But they will all, it will image those things and start tracking them. When you couple that with a zoom mechanism, now the system can take an initial 60-degree field of view and turn it into a 2-degree field of view at 32 times magnification. And that is really an effective way to get more pixels on target without a very expensive camera and a very high data stream. More importantly, when you start increasing the stream rates by high frame rates as well as high resolutions, you bog down the computer, and with negative consequences. So the combination of the two sometimes is a good idea.
Out of curiosity, this is a curiosity question, I guess. If you have you looked into the methodology employed by Project Hestelen in Norway, with Erling Strand and
Yeah, you know what? Interestingly, Chris O'Brien, who's part of my team, is knowledgeable of them. And much earlier on, I heard from them that they wanted to buy a UFODAP system because they weren't happy with what they've got. They haven't done it so far, but I understand they haven't changed much in a very long time. So I think they would be be great if they did and install that at their site or sites.
Yeah,
I hope they do.
Yeah, somebody even asked about, like, if you got one of these things at the Skinwalker Ranch.
You know what? The guy who owns the property right next to Skinwalker Ranch bought a dual camera UFODAP system to install there because he couldn't go on the ranch, but he figured anything flying over, he's going to see anyway, and which is fascinating. He hasn't done it yet. I got to bug him, I guess, to get it set up and running. But that was the concept. He went with it.
That's pretty good. Okay, so let me go back to some of the questions we asked previously, because I'm trying to keep up with the ones that are coming in. Once you capture a true UIP on a camera along with its data, who do you share that data with?
Well, as I mentioned, we have a collaboration with UFOData.org, which everybody should check out. And who I know who are actively working on a program to raise money and professionally develop that capability. Currently, if you get a UFODAP system, you aren't automatically sharing it with anybody. It's yours to control. You own the data, and you do whatever you want with it. Of course, from a scientific point of view, we encourage one not to willy-nilly take unknown things and throw them out on the internet. We'd hope you take the scientific approach and get some, as much feedback as possible, or couch it in terms that this is an unknown and in appropriate terms. But that's what we're waiting for. But meanwhile, we're fielding systems, and a lot can be done with the data that's, of course, in one's own possession. You can share it with whoever you want, or send it to Rich. We'll see what can happen.
We'll be happy to take it if it's really good.
Yeah.
Do you currently have any photos or videos of UAPs that you think that are worthy of an investigation using your equipment?
I don't. I wouldn't say that they're good enough to put in that category yet. That's what we're all working toward, and more and more installations. I have about a dozen installations, but most of them are not as active as I hope they would be. Most of them, they have their own computers they're operating themselves. A couple of them intend to share data. They port forward the cameras and equipment so that I can do it remotely. Bear in mind that the architecture of UFODAP is such that the cameras, the MSDAUs, and the computers can be all different locations all over the world and all combine into a single system. And so, if I could share the screen just for a second here, I'll show you something of that along that line. Let's see. Did that come up?
We are seeing this. Yeah. Okay. Now I see your desktop.
Yeah, that is that is the OTDAU software running in real time, seeing a image from 1920 by 1080 from a 30 times PTZ camera we've had there for at least 1.5 years through all weather conditions. You can imagine out in Colorado, snow, rain, sleet, you name it. And you can see that the latency of the data transmission is very low.
Ron, the picture went away. We've got a snip and sketch screen right now with my conclusions.
Really?
That's what's showing right now.
Oh. Let's stop the share and I'll try that again.
Yeah.
Let's see. Let's see, share. Okay, this will be better. How's that?
Now we got it. Yep. It looks like there's a vehicle moving across there. Several vehicles, actually.
Right. So you're looking kind of due east at the Great Sand Dunes National Monument.
Got it.
Out there. And we were fortunate enough to be able to locate this camera on the roof of a building on a ranch out there. And it's been there for a long time as a kind of a prototype and test, but it's as good as new. And the system can operate this camera automatically at any time. So, you know, and then we can record automatically all kinds of different data, including, you know, the real-time path. As you can see here, it's just randomly picked up something. You can see these overlapping boxes that it just illustrated for record what it's reacting to. But normally, especially with the software, the enhanced detection mechanism that I'm going to come out with shortly, that it will be a lot less sensitive to sort of, you might call it background noise. But it does really well now in what it does. And if you know, and it also includes, the software has a whole bunch of built-in test videos that illustrate how it, in fact, one of them is of the space station moving across the sky that it captured on just a 12 times PTZ camera.
All right, well, that's it's like 5 minutes before the networking session, so I want to kind of like end it here. I want to thank you for your time and your efforts bringing this forward. I think, you know, anything we can do as, you know, a scientific team to be able to get better data, get better photos, not be looking at, you know, like lens flares and a whole bunch of other stuff that we usually get thrown at us. It's always a good thing. And so all the work that you're doing is to be applauded. Both of your efforts are fabulous, and we want to stand behind it and support it any way we can. So please, you know, thank you both for coming on and sharing your solutions with us. It's all good. Everything is good.
Yeah, thank you very much. And I really appreciate your putting this conference together. It's just a yeoman's effort and with a great result, I think.
Well, thank you, and I appreciate the feedback, because yeah, I guess if we want to do this again, you know, I might be stuck at the helm again, and you're going to have to tolerate me. But it's a lot of work. But you guys are the ones that made it great. It's not me. I mean, it's fabulous. So thank you all for coming again.
Okay, and thanks, and hope everybody gets a chance to look at UFODAP.com and all the stuff I couldn't talk about.
All right, well, I'm going to end the session and the recording here, number one, and then we're going to switch gears, and then I want you to get prepared for the next session, which is the networking session, which then allows you to once again, as before, you'll be able to then see each other. You'll be in groups of 4 people, and then every 15 minutes you shift around and you get to meet another set of people. The controls for the video and the audio are at the bottom of the screen that you'll see on the networking page, and we'll take it from there. But I'm going to end this recording, and we'll go and now make the move. And don't forget to go in the agenda and then the networking session. All right. Thank you.